Welcome, everybody. Another episode of No Driving Gloves. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. That was kind of a little coup for us to get Derek to pull off that Andy Pilgrim interview. It's just the beginning of a few more. We've got a couple lined up. We've got one coming up with Bruce with the local British Car Club, and he's going to discuss a little bit about British cars and their collectability and a little event that the Birmingham Motoring Club has coming up. Derek's doing some... I don't know if we're allowed to say, but something to do with his museum and work. We'll leave it at that, but we haven't talked to you for, 6 weeks or so?
Oh, yeah, it's been a while. Just been a lot of odd things going on just with work and life in general, and just been a while since I've been free on Wednesday night,
We know it's a little bit rough being self-employed and traveling, and I know you've tried to make some of these shows, and we kind of say, you do have to leave at like 3 a.m. There's no sense in keeping you up until, delaying you an extra hour of going to bed. I know you still don't go to bed till 11 or something. Prepping for these shows and things. I know you just did Good Guys a couple weekends ago. No, it didn't quite go the way you'd hoped, but, that's part of the show circuit, I believe, right?
Well, we did exactly what we wanted to do at the show. We won Truck of the Year finalist, and ultimately, the goal is Truck of the Year early, Good Guys through Good Guys, and I guess we're a little short again. But you know what? That's I've said it before and I'll say it again. We don't build cars and trucks to go win trophies. We build them to win customers. As long as the customer we built that vehicle for is happy, at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. We all know that in the car show world, or any world where judging is involved or picking is involved, it's all just what somebody likes or what they don't like, or it's an opinion. No matter how you look at it, it's an opinion. It is what it is, and it's not going to slow me down. I'll tell you that.
Well, you've got a few years of work ahead of you anyway, at least, or guaranteed. And it might be politics and it's friends, and sometimes it's a good old boys club. That's the nature of car shows, and that I've been at some events, not naming them or even giving a range, but I've watched a guy win best People's Choice Best of Show because he went up and he bought like 150 tickets to that show, so he had 150 ballots, and him and his family sat around and voted for his car. He won People's Choice Best of Show, and, well, if that's what made him feel good to have that trophy, I guess that's what it did. It's not really fair to the second place guy, but I've seen that. I've seen, there was always a joke, previous job that I had, we always discussed a certain show. It seemed that whoever bought the event poster at the Saturday night auction and dinner would somehow win the show the next day, be best of show, or his car. Or it was just kind of funny how you went back and looked. It didn't happen every year, but it happened most every year. So it's one of those things about car shows and, politics and the game. And I think that'll lead us to the topic of tonight, where you and I discuss. I've done cars for concours shows, and then I've done cars for just, museum display and educational purposes, and I've done cars just for the hell of it and have fun and Saturday night cruise-ins, and you've done the same thing on the, hot rod side of everything, and I'm sure you've done some casual stuff. I know the stuff you built in college was more for casual Friday night cruises more than winning big awards, so we've all played that game, and everybody dreams of being able to spend $1 million on a restoration, or going to, calling up Big Oak Garage and say, hey, I've got a 55 post. I want something radical. What can you do for it? Money's no object. You build them a hell of a car. But there's some differences and there's some headaches. I'll let you lead in. What do you feel some of the details and getting into, when you start playing in that high-end game, opposed to the Saturday night cruising? I think we both agree that, sometimes it's nice just to have a Saturday night cruiser that you maybe can drive to work on Tuesday.
Exactly. We've built them all. We've built cars with $15,000 budgets. We've built cars with $1 million budgets. It's really ultimately what the customer wants to do with their car. Some guys love traveling the country and showing their cars off at the biggest shows there are and trying to win the biggest awards they can win. And then some guys, they don't care about an award for nothing. I mean, that is not why they're building a car. They want it to just drive and enjoy and take their grandkids for a ride, you know? Ultimately, most of your higher end show cars that we build here, you get to show them for a year, maybe two, you know, like the Good Guys type deal. You basically have a year. If you debut it late in the year, well, that's your year. If it's late in 2018, you got 2018, you know, to win a Good Guys specific award. You can go to other events and win Builder's Choice where other builders pick the top 10 or Good Guys picks the top 10 or whatever. But you're not going to win of the year finalist. If it came out late 2018, you're not going to do that in 2019. So, you know, you're kind of limited on how many times you can take your car and be eligible for that high-end award. So most of the time what happens is, you know, perfect example, a couple of years ago, we built a 55 Chevy First Series pickup truck. I say a couple, it's been 4 or 5 years ago. It done really, really well. Truck of the Year finalist, Builder's Choice everywhere it went. Top 25 shades. I mean, the truck did really well. Cover of 2 magazines. And now, it's not a daily driver, don't get me wrong, but the guy that owns it drives it a lot, you know, and we put cruise control on it and a few things like that to where he can actually drive it and enjoy it. And once it gets the first rock chip, the second one's a whole lot easier than the first one, you know. That's what he does. He drives it, enjoys it. And then the guys that we build the cruise night type cars, of course, we can't build a car for $15,000 anymore. We just can't do it. That was my first budget I ever had. My first build that ever came through the shop was $15,000. And we just physically can't do that anymore. The not as expensive stuff, because it's all expensive, we'll take to a few shows, whether it sits in our booth, if we're a vendor at that event or whatever. Then they take them home and they drive them and enjoy them. And most of these guys don't do cross-country road trips. They just hit local cruise night, enjoy hanging out with their friends and going to dinner with their wife or whatever.
It's kind of the same game in the restorations where you build a car and guy's restoring it so that he can do some cruise nights and that, or you're building it for a concours level show. When you're at that top of the game, I mean, you're spending buckets of money, your business or mine. And the car has a life expectancy. I mean, really, a top-line restoration can do 1 year on the concours circuit, and it can only do a couple of shows. A lot of cars at, say, Pebble, they cannot be shown anywhere for, a year prior to Pebble. So a lot of cars debut at Pebble, and then some other concours, or you pick the event that you really want to make the splash at, or you think you have the best chance of winning, or I guess it's make the splash, and you hope the builder gets it done for that. I mean, if you're building a car for Amelia Island in March, which is fairly easy to hit because it's kind of the first show of the season.
Those are the hardest ones to hit.
Yeah. Well, you've got a few months to build up, and, you kind of know it's there. If you miss, there's a couple other chances. But if you're building one for Hilton Head, which happens into October, beginning of November, you miss it, well, now you've got 6 more months to finish the car. And by then, that might not be the flavor of the day or such with the cars. It's really weird where if I'm, say, building a TR6 for a guy or restoring one for him, he's going to take that. He's going to hit a couple, the British show for a couple of years and possibly the rest of his life with the car, the local British show. And then he's going to hit a couple of cruise nights. And really, when you think, let's say we did a $500,000 restoration and the car gets shown 4 times and say it's 4 hours or 5 hours on the show. So you got 20 hours of enjoyment for that $500,000. Or a guy puts $50,000 into restoring his $20,000 TR6. And all of a sudden, he's able to use that car 3 or 4 times a month for 5 or 10 years, the smile per dollar is a lot better investment on that lower end car than the high end stuff. It's really what the owner wants and wants to achieve. And I'll say it's kind of cool to be at the top shows and be looked at, and everybody's talking to you, and you get to talk to all the famous people or the influencers there. I don't know if that's really I don't know if that's where it's at. I do enjoy going to the Saturday morning cruise in or Friday night cruise and hitting a parade or something with my car and kind of having fun and being one of the crowd. Maybe it's the way I grew up or lived. Less expensive cars don't have an expiration date.
I guess that's kind of where it makes more sense to build a hot rod than restore a car, is smile per dollar, because like you said, once you build a Pebble Beach car and it goes to Pebble Beach and then you show it, 4 or 5 more times, it's done. Yeah, you could get a Pebble Beach car out and drive it and enjoy it, but you're not going to go park it at a cruise night somewhere. There's just, at least I've never seen a concourse restoration car at a cruise night. Where your hot rod, that's what it's really designed to do. It's designed to be driven. Just about every upgrade we make, other than visual changes, is a performance type upgrade. So it can get out on the road and run 80, 90 mile an hour and keep up with traffic and stop on a dime and shifting gears and having fun and burning tires and stuff like that. Maybe the smile per dollar on the hot rod side, that could be why the hot rod industry is just freaking booming right now.
I guess it's really what you're up to and what again, your final goals with the car and what your tastes are. One nice thing, I guess, the advantage possibly in the restoration is you're restoring a car back to original, and there's probably 3 or 4 people at least that want it, because most cars were a production vehicle or even say a one-off Delahaye custom body or a Duesenberg or something like that. There's still people that want them and they have a market. Where you have a lot of fun with the hot rods and such, but sometimes they're so unique and built for a person that there's the market's a little bit more limited. So I want to say there's an argument each way to go and what you want to do.
I agree with you 100%. As far as selling a car, once you're done with it and getting rid of it, you can sell a restored car a whole lot easier. As far as on the high end side of things, okay, you can sell a restored car a little easier than you can a hot rod. That's because we custom tailor each car to the owner. It's been built for this specific guy. We put the seat where he wants it. We put the steering wheel where he wants it. We put the shifter where he wants it, the pedals where he wants it. It's perfectly comfortable for him. Where somebody else gets in it and they're like, this ain't worth crap. Where an original car, hey, it is what it is. That's the way it was in, 1940. So I'm happy with that. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting on the similarities, but the differences on that end. And I want to say it's more enjoyable, but I don't know which way to say. Is building your hot rod cooler? Is building your concour car cooler? Is restoring a car for Saturday? Is building a Camaro in your garage? For same thing, go to the strip each weekend with it, or just to go to the cruises. That's the fun thing about cars is you can do whatever you want. I mean, there's a way for everybody to have fun with whatever budget there is. I guess part of the focus of this episode, or the direction I wanted to say, is I talk to a lot of people that, I wish I could have that. I wish I could have that. I wish I could have a 918 Porsche. I wish I could have, Cadzilla, say, from Boyd, or things like that, they're really unobtainable, or an Ed Roth car or something like, these dream cars everybody wants and has, but there's problems associated with them. No matter how much money you have. I mean, I work around extremely expensive, extremely rare cars every day, and they take a lot of maintenance and they take a lot of work, and I can have just as much fun. And we'll say the museum I work, we've got things from $3,000 in our car collection to multi-million dollars. And one of my favorite cars to get in is this home restoration of a 1950 Plymouth. And it's an all-stock car. It's all original. Three on the tree transmission. Not very fast, but it just does everything, and it feels good, and it's a fun, enjoyable car. You don't have to be at that top level. And people ask me, what car would you take out of the collection? And if you could have anything. And realistically, yeah, there's some you could, if you're taking it and you're not allowed to sell it for money, that Plymouth would be high on my list. It might not be the car, but it's going to be up there. Fun and enjoyable, and probably worth 20 grand, 15, 20 grand, something like that. I haven't looked at a price on it in a couple of years. It was donated probably 8 years ago. Trusty old steed.
Yeah, sometimes it's those cars that you really just get out and enjoy. We've got a 66 Cadillac in the shop right now that we actually just started today. It's been here for a couple of months. Really, really nice. Pretty much all original 66 Cadillac. It's been lowered a little bit, but other than that, it's original. Man, we drove this thing all over town for the last couple of months and has just had a ball. And when we get finished with it, yeah, it's going to be a really, really nice car. It's actually going to be more roadworthy. It's going to have better brakes, a better motor, better suspension. I bet it's not going to be any more fun to drive than the way it was this morning before we started taking it apart.
And I guess that's, again, like I say, the point of this episode is just reminding people, have fun with what you have. It's always nice to have goals, to have something a little bit better, but don't say, well, because I'm driving whatever, have fun with it. Do it. I mean, we all probably drive to work every day, and we pass this, say 1993 Honda Civic DX that's got a ground effect kit falling off of it and a rusted out coffee can exhaust on it, tinted back window with a bubble in the middle, as Mix-a-Lot would say. But you know what? The kid's having fun. And I never criticize anybody like that. This whole thing should be for fun. And if all of a sudden you roll up in your pristine 57 Chevy or a new Corvette and, go, what the heck's up with this kid? And, he doesn't need to be with us or park next to me. The kid's trying. It took me years to have enough money to do things with cars. I go back to my Isuzu pickup in 1990, 91. I didn't have a lot of money. I did what I could. I adapted a quicker ground effect kit from a S10 to fit my Isuzu. I had Mustang 2 louvers, painted and put them on my hood as, hood vents and things like that. Yeah, looking back, it was cheesy as hell. They weren't painted to match because I couldn't match the black paint on the truck. I couldn't afford to paint them, so all my accessories were added on in blue or purple or something. And I eventually got to a point where I could afford to do the engine swap. I eventually got to the point where I could paint the truck properly and have black and purple and a tonneau cover and the convertible kit. And if you would have started to insult and pick on me, hell, I might have grown up and been that asshole lawyer and that I really wanted to be when I grew up. I think I don't know how we progressed in the episode, but here I am all of a sudden defending the newcomer to the hobby and encouraging those of us that are there to embrace him. Like I say, who cares what he's driving or what the status is? $8 an hour at Pizza Hut or McDonald's or 7-Eleven doesn't buy a lot when you pick up a catalog. And I think the aftermarket exhaust for a Subaru is $700. That's a lot of time when you got to make $8 an hour and you've got to pay rent and possibly feed yourself and a significant other and clothes on your back and things like that. It's rough. Encourage the kids and encourage the people that have them. And it doesn't matter if they're 18 or 25 or 37 or 65. Cars are supposed to be fun.
Yep, that's why we started this. It's supposed to be fun, and whether you get your enjoyment out of winning trophies, driving your car, and not even going to a car show, just getting in it and driving it to the grocery store and back, or not even stopping at the grocery store, just getting out and wasting gas. If that's what it's about, then hey, that's what it's about. Me, myself, I like doing all of it. I like going to car shows. I like driving my hot rod. I like going to local cruise nights. I like going to restoration shows, concourse type shows. I like going to the World of Wheels where they don't even move. They're just sitting on stands, and some of them don't even run, the artistic side of it. I like going to the drag strip and running them up and down the drag strip. So anything that has to do with four wheels, I'm pretty well addicted to it.
And that's the whole name of the game there. I think with that, we could, maybe we'll jump into seeing if we can get, so we've covered a little bit about that on the, what do I want to say?
Enjoyment of your car.
And the smaller shows and how they really benefit the hobby, which kind of leads us into where I'm going to go, and we're going to jump over. I'm going to speak with Birmingham Motoring Club.
I think all car clubs, it's just a gathering of like-minded individuals.
Well, the Viper Club, the Porsche Club have similar mottos, and then it's the cars that brought us together. It's the people that keep us coming back, and that's the whole thing with the Birmingham Motoring Club, or even the Porsche Club or the Viper Club. Yeah, you might have to, I joke the Porsche Club's the most expensive club in town to join because you have to own a Porsche to join PCA. You can join the Viper Club. You can join the Ferrari Club in North America and not own the car and still go to their events. And it's just, again, like-minded people having a good time, and that's how you become a Ferrari owner, is you go to the clubs not owning a car and chatting with the people and maybe learning of a deal or learning of the car that you can buy and service in your garage. And that's some of the stuff I think the Birmingham Motoring Club will be displaying at their upcoming show. And yes, I know we're a national podcast in that. We're hoping they can help spread some light on why you want to join your local European British club, and if you're in that, or how to seek them out. I think we're going to go ahead and drop Will from the show now and join our representative from the Birmingham Motoring Club.
Hope everybody has a good week.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Will, and hopefully we'll talk to you next week. And maybe have Derek back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think next week's the week we'll all three be back.
We'll give it a try. And, of course, if you've got any ideas for topics or guests for the show, BMC reached out to be on here to discuss the show. We welcome your input. Okay, as Will and I have alluded to in the first half of this episode, we're trying something new, and we're having a guest join us. We've got Bruce from the Birmingham Motoring Club, which used to be formerly known as the Birmingham British Motoring Club a couple of years ago. Actually, when I was serving as an officer with the club, we became more encompassing and started to include European, Japanese, just got it off the little island of Great Britain, and kind of became the club of Birmingham, Alabama, for the forgotten cars a little bit. And I think the club in that has expanded. I haven't attended a meeting in a while. Am I still correct on that, Bruce? Or
Well, yes, that's true, John. We're still looking forward, and we've always enjoyed when you get there. So please come on back. We're at about 35, 40 members now. We meet on Tuesdays once a month, and it's a really nice bunch of people, like you've always said. I certainly enjoyed your talks when you were there.
I've always enjoyed, but it's just how life gets busy. And
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, buddy. But it's certainly, life moves on. It does do that. But I appreciate you inviting me on tonight. I understand you want to talk about some British cars. I've got two that I can certainly bend your ear on.
Yeah, let's find out a little bit about your history and what brought you to the Birmingham Motoring Club, or BMC, and a little bit of your car history and background there, and then we'll get to the core of the thing and kind of discuss your upcoming show.
Well, I certainly don't want to bore your listeners too much. I'm assuming that they're all gearheads and car guys and gals. The car I originally started with is a 1963 Morgan. I always like to tell people it was either the greatest move in my college career or the worst. I had cut my teeth on an MG Midget Mark III when I was in college, and I'd always wanted a Morgan. I'd always heard that they were the British car to have, and I didn't know very much about them, and my dad actually found one in Memphis. It was used, and we did everything wrong. We did not test drive it. We did not take it to a mechanic. I just said I wanted it. I took all the money out of my savings account and bought it for $4,000. It was a nasty color brown, but I drove it in graduate school, and the car nickeled and dimed me to death. And finally decided to fix the door. You know, the Morgans, one of the myths is that they're made out of wood, and that's really not true, so to speak. The frame is actually steel, but the subframe that attaches to the frame is Belgian ash. It is wood. So one of the doors had rotted, and I decided to fix the door, thinking, oh, this is no big deal. And 2 years later, my father asked me very strongly to get the car, which was now in pieces, out of both garages. We then took it to a restorer here in Birmingham. It took a long time to get it finished for various reasons. Like you said earlier, life goes on. I got a job. My parents passed away. You know, so we really had things going on. But it took quite a while to get it to where you see it today. I think you have seen it once or twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've came out. I think I did an appraisal for you a few years ago on the car, but when
oh, you did. That's right. I forgot that. And thank you for doing that, because that was I was very new at the time to the collector car world, and that appraisal, thank God I have not had to use it. The car has not been in a wreck, but I thought it was a very wise piece of information you gave me back then, and I certainly appreciate that.
Let me interrupt and say that's one of the benefits to our listeners that, Will, Derek, and I always promote getting involved with the car clubs and car culture, and that's one of the things is you were new to the collector car hobby, kind of. I mean, you did the restoration and you dabbled, but once you started coming to the club meetings and that, and you got to meet me, you got to meet a lot of other car guys.
Well, what's so funny, or that's not funny now, it's just sort of standard, but one of the things that I have read is that when you want to get into the classic car world, whether it's American muscle or foreign, you really need to find a club and start going to the meetings and meeting the people, because they will tell you about where to get the best paint job and where to get the wheels balanced and how to fix the battery. I mean, there's a world of information in the Birmingham Motoring Club, and it covers all kinds of cars. French, British, and Japanese. I mean, there's just a lot of information there. So that was a good thing to do. In fact, I went on and joined several other clubs to get more information, because that's sort of a thing you need to have when you have one of these cars. But I've really enjoyed my time with the Birmingham Motoring Club.
If memory serves me correctly, the Morgan then inspired kind of a couple other purchases in that, as as the career concluded and you retired and you're beginning to enjoy life.
Yeah. Yeah, I will tell you, the listeners need to know I've retired. That's true, and I do have some time on my hands. The Morgan is a high-maintenance car in the sense of it's British, and you have to check everything all the time when you go somewhere with it and make sure it's not, leaking oil or going to die of electrical failure. And I'll tell you, if you keep the cars up and you take care of them, they pretty much will not let you down, but you have to do things more to them than you do a modern-day car. But you're right. The Morgan has now had it for 10 years since I've been retired, and it's been a great car. I happen to now have purchased a 1974.5 MGB GT. That is a car that has really fascinated me. And you had spoken on one of your shows earlier about restoration versus preservation. And I remember coming to one of your meetings. It's really fascinating that my other life was an archaeologist, and so preservation is a real thing for archaeologists, and and then the restoration also dealing with telling the story. So I wanted to keep this, and it was a true barn find. We found it in a basement. One of the members of the car club found it and was able to get it and locate it, and we were able to bring it back. And I wrestled with the concept of trying to, do I want to restore it or preserve it as it is? And the body was great, but the interior was pretty much gone. We have decided to not preserve it, but restore it to the way it looked in 1974 when it was sitting on the showroom floor. We're not going to add anything to it to make it fancy or anything go down that road of modifying it, super modifying it or anything like that. It's blue. It's what they call teal blue or mineral blue. And it's one of the 9,626 cars produced that year. So it's really quite fascinating. And my wife has told me I've got to get it out of the garage before Christmas. I think some of your car guys may be laughing at that, but yeah.
I was going to say, is it we're approaching winter and somebody's car is in the driveway?
No, that really isn't the case, but she's kind of let us know that it's time now. And we've had the car for about a year and 4 months. And it really, it's coming along fine, and I try to do something every day on it. But it's those things where you have to, get the parts, and you have to make sure they are the right ones, and you have to make sure they're period correct. And you know that as a person who does this for a living. It's frustrating. You have some days when the new part that you ordered doesn't quite fit like the old original did. You get stuck in some areas.
That's one of the perks, I guess, or enjoyable things about the old cars, hoping that your reproduction or your NOS part actually fits the car. And
I've become really good at searching on eBay, and there's some parts places that I go and look in England now to get what I want. So it's quite an adventure, and I really was reluctant to start this. And I've had some great help from the people in the club, particularly I'd shout out to Randy Darden, who's been just absolutely marvelous in letting me use tools and helping me and guiding me. And I wouldn't have tried this without
It's
some help.
Always an adventure when you do it yourself, but it's
Yeah, well, I got to admit now I'm not doing it all myself. There's a lot of people that I'm going to have to write a letter to and say thank you. The engine transmission was done in Mississippi. Paint job was done by a gentleman in Leeds. So I mean, there's different people who've helped me a great deal and said, don't do that, do this. And so we're trying to make sure that we keep it as authentic as possible. But it's a great little car, and it was MG's first hardtop. I mean, they decided to put a top on the car, and it went basically from about 65 to 1980. They even stuck a V8 in it. Now, the V8 engine wasn't brought over here, but you can imagine a Rover V8 engine in a car that size. It's quite an issue. And I guess the other thing...
I'm not going to let you get out of this because I've actually recently had some listeners inquire and go, hey, do you talk about Japanese cars? And I'm going to say you've got one. We'll go briefly, okay. But you've kind of got a unique one in your garage.
I do. I have a 2017 Mazda MX-5, what they call a limited edition. This is one of 1,000 minus, I think it's number 800 and something, but it's the meteor gray color, I think is what they call it. And that was an interesting, Mazda was going to launch this car. I saw it on the internet. I fell in love with the retractable hardtop and the flying buttresses on the wings on the top. And I thought, well, I never win anything, but you had to go online. You had to hit the button and make a selection. And so I did that, but I didn't get anything back. I had no idea I was going to get one until I received an email and a form that I had to fill out. And it asked me specifically how many other Mazdas did I have. And I had actually had a truck, a field truck, and I'd had an 808 station wagon when I was in college, which ran better than the Morgan. So anyway, I submitted all this information to him, still didn't hear anything. And then suddenly got an email back from the head of the company saying, yes, you're in the 1,000 group. Now you have to go pay for it. I mean, they weren't giving them away, but the folks at the Med Center Mazda did a really nice deal with me, and so I was able to get one. If you haven't driven some days I'll drive the Morgan, which as you know is a 4-speed non-synchro mesh car, and then you step into the Miata, which is 6 speeds, and you go from 65 brake horsepower, up to I think the MX probably has about 165 horsepower, something like that. But it's quite a different time capsule, if you will. And so it gives me a really interesting spread of what I can drive and how, you take a turn in the Morgan and you're basically pulling the wheel and that big 15-inch wheel around. And the Miata, you just touch the wheel, and it corners like it's on rails. It's just an amazing car. And I can understand why.
I tell stories all the time that, I'll occasionally do demonstration laps in a Lotus 11 Series 1 car, which is a split axle, 4-speed, and then turn around and get into a Lotus 23 afterwards, which, is independent suspension, a lot more powerful, everything. It's kind of the evolution of the Lotus 11. And one day I actually did my demos in reverse, and I drove the 23, then the 11. I almost crashed the 11 because it's amazing. They're two different animals, and I'm sitting here thinking, as you're describing, 4-speed, non-synchro mesh, and then you get into a Miata that has
a 6-speed. Yeah, I mean it's fully synchro mesh 6-speed, and it'll go. I mean, I have to be very careful on the highway because I'll be sitting at 80 in no time at all, and it is, and of course it's got all the electronics, modern day stuff that you'd want in a car. I was going to tell you, maybe your listeners already know this. We're talking about Japanese cars. The Miata, is now over 25 years old, and the NAs, the original Miatas, are now collector's items. If you go on to Hemmings, you can actually find low mileage Miatas that are now $25,000, which is kind of crazy. And there is now a restoration program in Japan only, not here in America yet. You can take your original Miata NA, they will rebuild it for you with authorized parts, and it'll come out of the factory looking just like it did when you bought it. And it'll run you about $35,000 in American money. Several Japanese clients have already gone through this process. Yeah, I guess it's kind of equivalent to what Mercedes and some of the other car makers do about advertising that you can always get your parts. Now the Miatas can do that. So if you're a person that has one of those original NAs, you can pretty much find the parts for it.
Zero. I think I had, surprise the listeners, I had a Miata back probably 15 years ago, 96 Miata with the 1.8 liter. I always loved that little car, and I wasn't aware of that restoration program. I was going to say,
I just read about it probably about 2 weeks ago. It's in the Mazda on their website, but they are now, I mean, people, Mazda, I can remember being in college when the Mazda came out, and of course the MGs didn't get across the pond anymore. I mean, and I really wanted a sports car, and the only opportunity, I couldn't afford a Corvette, so the only thing that was open was these Miatas, these, quote, Japanese cars. And I fell in love with it, but I couldn't afford it at the time. I mean, you're going to school and trying to make life work, and I just thought they were great little cars.
I wanted one from day one. I remember seeing it like on the cover of Car and Driver, $13,900 or $800 for a base package car with steel wheels, and had wanted one for years.
Well, a lot of people threw shade at them for a long time, but they are the car that saved the SCCA. I mean, they were raced and slalomed, and they even won their class at a Grand Prix, I think, a couple of years ago in the 90s. So, I mean, it's a very successful car, and it's the smallest. I didn't realize this. It's the smallest of all the Japanese car companies. But Mazda is clearly, I'm going to be cliche here, but they're clearly driven. They enjoy the driver. They really want you to enjoy the car, and they've thought about the driver. I mean, when you get in the car, it's very ergonomic. I mean, everything is right there. And then, of course, when you get in the Morgan, you've got a wooden dash facing you with no tachometer on this particular Morgan. Mine is the 4.4. It's the very base model, so they didn't have a tach. So on mine, when you shift, you have to listen. You have to be listening to the gears, and you have to be listening to the revs, and then make the shift appropriately. I was very startled in the new Miata. When you're on a hill, all of us old guys that learned how to shift, you're on a hill and you don't want your car to roll back. So there's a way to heel and toe that so you don't do that. The Miata automatically holds the position for 3 seconds, which I found very frustrating, and I had to learn to reshift the car when it was on the hill.
Another one of those things that makes it an adventure when you drive the Morgan in the morning and the Mazda in the afternoon.
Yeah, pretty much so. It is quite interesting. And I was going to say, if you want to talk about British cars, the Morgan Motor Car Company 2019, they are celebrating their 110th anniversary. They're the only company that is still privately owned. And they sell cars all over the world. And actually, it used to be that Morgans couldn't come into the country now because of, it used to be the safety standards and the bumpers and all that. So there was a long 20-year period there around 1980 when you couldn't get a new Morgan into the country. They were just, you couldn't get them. But now, because of I guess you might know about the legislation, because they're considered continuation cars, you can have a brand new 2019 Morgan Roadster V6 Ford powered. If you want to spend that kind of money, they're a little pricey, but they can now bring them into the United States. But I was going to say the Morgans, of course, everybody got really excited a couple of years ago with the three-wheeler. And then, of course, they got the Roadster, the V6, and you can get a V8 in it if you want. And then there's the 4.4 and the Plus 4. So they've got a full line of sports cars. What's interesting about them, and then you know this, the engines, Morgan has never built their own engine. My engine is a Ford, basically a Ford Pinto engine in the Morgan. BMW supplies their engines, Ford supplies their engines, and Mazda supplies the gearboxes on some of them, not all of them. But so it's really kind of an international company.
Well, the Morgan company has always interested me, and when I lived in Northern Virginia, one of the top dealers at the time in the country was just down the street from my house, roughly just down the street. And I know there's also I think they've since closed, but I know there's also a large dealer out west, and we see them around. But Morgan's also that stubborn company that, about 1935, they decided cars should have four wheels and went to the four-wheel version, and did.
You're right. Well, it was due to taxes. I mean, back then the British you were charged by the number of wheels on your vehicle, so they kept the what they call the three-wheeler, the trike. They kept that until 1936, and in 36, 36, they decided to go with a four-wheeler. And if you see mine, even though mine's a 63, the design from 1936 to it hasn't changed. Even today, the modern 2019 Roadster looks pretty much like the one sitting in the garage. I mean, of course, it's got newer, they don't have wooden dashes anymore, and better heaters and, lots of modern equipment on the car. But the design, they really haven't changed the design. The wings are the same. The seating, of course, is better. My car had bladder seats that you blow up, think whoopee cushion. You literally blew the seat up like one of those floats, and then you stuffed it in the leather pouch, and then you sat on it. And, of course, that worked fine until the air leaked out, and then you were just sort of sitting on a piece of plywood. So it was
very basic transportation.
And, of course, there's all kinds of jokes about them. I mean, they only have to drive 90 miles because that's the breadth of England and stuff like that. And I get the joke about the termites all the time. It comes with a wooden frame, and yes, the wooden frames did rot, but there's ways to fix that now. And you can buy, if you choose to get into a Morgan and decide you want that to be your classic, you need to get the best one you can afford because they're kind of pricey to start getting parts together. The engine parts are not so bad. I mean, it's a Ford Pinto engine, but the body parts can be a little bit difficult. I know you guys out at Barber had one for a while and let me photograph it, which was great. I appreciated that.
We had the Morgan for a while, and then with a little bit of irony, the differentials in the Lotus Mark 10s that I've been restoring over the last 6 or 7 years, and even the Mark 8 series cars, it's basically a Morgan differential. It's a gear set, and and it actually uses, I guess, the front housing, and then Chapman just kind of did his own rear cover to make it look like his, but there's some of that Morgan that slips in there.
Well, the sliding front axle, that arrangement that they've got on the front of those cars is really, it's kind of goofy, but it works. If you hit a pothole at the wrong speed, you wind up getting a sort of a left right bounce on your front end of your car, which is very disconcerting. Shaking the steering wheel out of your hands. You got to be kind of careful of what you hit in that car. It's a fun car. It's been a lot of fun owning it, and I'm kind of like Jay Leno in the sense that I'm going to pass it on to somebody else and let them enjoy it too. And the same thing for the GT when it's done. I mean, I'm from the school that says drive them, enjoy them, have fun with them. Now, my car, I don't put it on a trailer. I drive it. It's got chips of paint, coming off of it here and there. And I've done some things to it, like I've moved the battery from the back up to the front so it's easy to service. It's a driver as opposed to a trailer car. That's kind of where I am in my collecting world. I decided they're too much fun. You want to drive?
Well, is that what you're going to take out to the show that's coming up? Yeah, we're having you on to kind of promote. Granted, it's a Birmingham.
Yeah, let's talk about the show for a second. Yes, the Morgan will be there. It's called Sports Cars at Brookwood Village. It's going to be on a Saturday, November the 3rd, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 p.m., and we are welcoming all sports cars and classic automobiles. If you've got an MGB, if you've got a Nissan, a Datsun, if you've got a Mustang, if you've got an American car, we want you to come out because we look at these cars as rolling art. These are cars that are classics. We're going to be featuring cars of Jaguar. I know we're going to have an XKE there. There will probably be some other Jaguars there, both modern Jaguars and late model ones, and they're incredible automobiles. I think the XKE was labeled what Enzo Ferrari said it was one of the most beautiful cars in the world. So we're going to have some interesting cars there. I want everybody to come out and take a look at it. Of course, being at Brookwood Village, November the 3rd, Alabama's away. Auburn, I think Auburn's playing at Texas A&M, so it's a great time to come out. You can go to the car show, and it won't interfere with your football. The people who bring their cars, who register their cars, it's only a $20 entry fee for the car. If you want to put your MG or your Ferrari out there, it's $20. It's free for those spectators. So if you don't have a car, or if your classic car is not ready to show yet, come on out and look and see, get some ideas and see what other people are doing with their cars. I also need to tell your listeners they can go to BirminghamMotoringClub.com. That's our website. You can register online. You can pay with a credit card or PayPal. You can register by mail, and you can register the day of the show. You can pay now. You can go online and pay, or you can pay the day of the show. It shouldn't be, we've tried to make it as easy for people to come out and show their car, make it as easy as possible for them. We are located, the show will be at Brookwood Village. As you face Brookwood Village, it's to the left. There's a restaurant over there, I think, and it's right behind, on the left-hand side of Brookwood Village, in the parking lot back there. There'll be a lot of signage. There'll be some flags. You'll drive in. If you pre-registered, that'd be great. We'll just basically take your name and direct you to a parking spot. We look forward to everybody coming out and seeing these cars.
I'm hoping to be able to...
I hope you'll be able to come out there too, John.
I'm not sure. I ought to be honest.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Schedule that far out, but I usually try to make it out there and try not to cause too many problems when I'm there.
Well, let me tell you, we're getting some great sponsorship from Brookwood Village, World Class Autos, Empire Auto House, Jolly Ranchers, Seasick Records are some of the sponsors that have already signed up. So we're always looking for more sponsors. So if there is a sponsor out there, certainly get in touch with us. We'd love to have your name out there too.
Well, let me throw out there that Brookwood Village is in Birmingham, Alabama, because a lot of our listeners are nowhere near Birmingham.
Well, I was going to say, I forgot that we are more than just local here. When you go to the website, there is a Brookwood Village. You can get directions to it. So if you have listeners in Montgomery or in Chattanooga or anywhere else that are coming, I hadn't really thought of that, but there's lots of hotels in the area coming in from Atlanta. It's right there off the interstate, so it'd be easy to find it. Contact us on the webpage, and we'll have somebody get back to you and give you, like I said, there's directions on the webpage. We want to make it real easy for people to come and find us, bring their cars, and enjoy the show. And
let me also add, we didn't mention it, and in typical Birmingham Motoring Club fashion, every year they do their show. They generate a little bit of money, and they always make a generous donation. And I think this year,
yes,
it's to
Camp Smile a Mile. Yes, this is our 4th annual event at Brookwood, and Camp Smile a Mile is our charity event. So when you register that $20, that doesn't go to the club. That goes totally to Camp Smile a Mile. They provide childhood cancer services for children with cancer. So it's a great charity, and we really enjoy them, and we're just very pleased that we can make that donation to them. So somebody's out there worried that the money goes to the club? No, the money goes to Camp Smile 'em Out, every penny of it. We don't take anything for it. All the club members volunteer their times and services.
No, we do thank you for joining us today, Bruce. We got a lot out of you. I know we originally said about a 10-minute, but we went a little over 30 minutes here chatting about Morgans and Miatas and MGs. And, you know, like I said, I went to this show many years. I've put this show together for a few years. I've always enjoyed it, always had a great time. So I'll do my best to make it on November 3rd. And again, that's November 3rd, 9 to 2. So you can swing out there.
9 to 2 at Brookwood Village, November 3rd. And thank you, John, for having me. I really appreciate you giving us this opportunity.
So thank you, Bruce. And you don't have a meeting between now and then. Maybe I'll just see you on the 3rd.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.